Citizens of football land, welcome back to the Badlands feed. It's Buck the Trend. I'm your host, Dan Essian. Coming to you today with a solo pod one more time. Looking at a guest next week, so we'll see what happens there. I wanted to really discuss this week a little bit of positives. And look, you can't blame me this week or any week this season. The positives are on defense. They don't exist anywhere else. So that's where I'm going. And we'll, in this context, discuss a little bit of offense as well. I can't go a whole pod without roasting the team at this point. But it is what it is. It's the reality of the season. Tough season. But yeah, let's go through some positives, shall we? I think the numbers we've seen from the Jets defense, honestly, they get missed. I think because of how terrible things are going, people kind of just focus on what happens in the moment. And I do want to kind of show why this particular unit was built for a run, was built for what they're not getting basically from their offense. So yeah, I'll just go through that a little bit. I'm going to just run through some of the stat rankings so far this season, and basically just discuss how they were put together and why they were, the perfect unit for a functional offense. And I'm not saying a top 10 offense or top 5 offense. I'm saying the middle of the road offense. Yeah, so right now I think in general the Jets defense is built to really destroy the passing game for their opponents, cause havoc, create a few turnovers, and just get the ball back to the offense as much as possible. They've been doing that in terms of pressuring the quarterback. And it's interesting because their sack numbers aren't super high, and I think that's what people will always look at in the end. But if you take a look at the more intricate statistics, and it's not super intricate, we're not talking about like, some crazy stat that we've never used before. We're literally just talking about percentages because this is the reality of the situation. Teams don't have to pass against the Jets because often they know the opposing offense is going to do absolutely nothing. Right? And so it's like, great. Do we have to do this? Do we have to drop back this many times? No. But when they do drop back, when they do try to rely on the passing game, it fails miserably every single time. Right? And so a little bit of pass rush, the Jets are 9th in sack percentage. Right? So it's sacks per drop back. Exactly. What is the percentage of likelihood the Jets get sacks per dropback, basically based on their sack totals versus pass attempts against them? So you're 9th in sack percentage, right? So you might not have the highest sack total, but when the teams are dropping back, right, you're getting to the quarterback. What does that mean? That means if your offense could do anything, like again, middle of the road, anything, if they could do anything, get any lead, put any points on the board, you are likely going to win those games, right? Because if you're getting the quarterback that often, you're causing havoc. They're going to have a hard time keeping up. If you ever get a lead, they're going to have a hard time overcoming that lead, right? They don't get leads. They don't score points. So you're 9th in sack percentage. You're 1st in pressure percentage, right? That's outstanding, honestly. The Jets are getting to the quarterback more than I think people think. 3rd in quarterback knockdown percentage, 1st in hurry percentage, and once again, they are dead last in blitz percentage. So as much as they've had great blitz schemes that they've introduced this season, they're not blitzing that much. They're rushing forward. They're getting to the quarterback either way, right? That's outstanding. That's exactly what you want for your pass rush. That is a top tier pass rush, and it just doesn't matter, right? Because And anyway, we'll get into some of that other stuff a little bit later about just kind of the give up mentality on offense and with the front office. Yeah, so again, more on the Jets defense, more on the positives. Third fewest passing yards allowed per game. Eighth fewest passing touchdowns allowed in the NFL. Second best yards per play allowed. I'll repeat that one. Second best yards per play allowed. They're not giving up yards. Right? So the opposing offense is having a really hard time just making their way down the field. Right? So again, you just have to do literally anything on offense. Right? Ninth in takeaways. Their much maligned run defense, which I'm sure those who hate talking about defense are yelling at their computers right now about the run defense. You're not mentioning the run defense. Yes, I will mention the run defense. 11th fewest yards per carry. As bad as people have said, the run defense is terrible. It's awful. It's not that bad. Let's get serious here. 11th fewest in the NFL, right? So as much as people made it seem like it's bottom tier, one of the worst, it's not. The run defense is fine. It's not as good as it could be. It's fine, right? Teams are running against the Jets a lot, right? Because again, like I mentioned earlier, they get the lead. Do they have to pass? No. So like what's the point? What's the point of like, great, I'm gonna do this thing that I know the Jets are destroying. They're not gonna let me pass the ball. So yeah, I have the lead. Why risk it? I'm just gonna run the ball, right? The Jets are second in rushing attempts against, right? So teams are just like, yeah, I'm not going to throw my head into a brick wall here over and over again. I'm going to just try to go around it, right? Which is, I mean, ironic because that's basically what the Jets have done on offense this entire season from the front office down is we're just going to keep going into that brick wall over and over again after the Aaron Rodgers injury. So, like you can see, the Jets defense is doing well. Those are the positives. A lot of really good things happening there. The coaching staff on defense is doing a great job of developing players, putting them in the right positions to succeed. A player like, anyway, we'll get into that a little bit later about the players that are succeeding and the players that aren't due to the job of this coaching staff. But yeah, the Jets defense has looked really good. And now, if you consider the anchor that they're dealing with, right, on the other side of the ball, the Jets offense 30th in scoring, 30th in yards per play, not moving the ball at all, not putting points on the board, last in first downs, not moving the ball, fourth most turnovers, you're turning the ball over, despite the fact that everyone likes to point, Zach's interception numbers were down when he was in. He's still fumbling the ball like crazy. And, as much as people love to be a little selective about the things that they discuss, of course. So somehow we're talking about Garrett Wilson's fumbles and Zach's fumble numbers are, about as bad as they've ever been. And he's not a rookie. But yeah, sure. The offensive line is bad. Yes, sure. Yes. But I've seen quarterbacks hold on to the ball despite that, but that's a whole other conversation. Second most turnovers lost, of course. Expected point contribution on offense, dead last. Sack percentage allowed, again, offensive line is bad, 31st. Terrible offensive line. So a lot of sacks. First in fumbles lost. So again, you have a giant anchor that you're dealing with on offense, and it's impossible for even one of the best units in the NFL on defense to take advantage of it, right? And what will always happen in the NFL is that unit will always drag down the other unit. And that's exactly what's happening here. I talked about this earlier in the season. This is exactly what we're seeing, right? It's really hard to overcome that. And they are mostly overcoming that somehow, leading to these like 13-9 type games, right? But it just doesn't matter because they can't score. They can't do anything on offense at all. Nothing, right? And so I want to talk a little bit more now about this collaboration between coaching staff and front office to build these two units, right? And this is going to be important going forward, especially if they're saying that everyone's coming back, they have to have a plan. They have to have a plan on offense. They have to figure it out, right? The plan on offense this year was obviously terrible. Like bringing in Aaron Rodgers is great. That's the great move right there. That's everything else. Has seemed like, was this great? Was paying Lazard that money that great? Was bringing in all of Aaron Rodgers' friends a good decision and taking up roster spots? And then you're basically signing 2 undrafted free agents and saying that, hey, if anything happens, you guys are like one of the more important pieces of this offense, right? Was that smart? No, right? But okay. We'll get into a little bit of that. One thing that the front office stressed when they hired Robert Saleh was that it'd be a collaborative approach between the coaching staff and the front office when it comes to team building, right? The plan on defense was really obvious. Like I mentioned earlier, destroy the opposition's passing game, cause havoc in the backfield, have the D-line get upfield, have aggressive linebacker play, and build a really strong secondary, which I think for a lot of fans, including myself, I did not think that they would place such emphasis on the secondary as much as they did in terms of what they invested. But they did, particularly in the draft. They have accomplished building a unit capable of doing all of those things that they set out to do, right? Robert Saleh built his defense. He built a defense that he envisions as a perfect unit, right? He's built that. They're done. That is complete, right? Because of that insight of Saleh and what he's built in the past and where the teams he's come from, Pete Carroll teams, he's come from the great defense he built in at the 49ers. And we even heard D'Amico Ryans giving him huge props. He didn't have to, but he did, right? And obviously that's particularly timed. So don't think that that's just a random thing. He just thought of it. Like, trust me, he knows what's going on in the NFL. He knows what's going on with the Jets. He knows what's going on with his good friend, right? And so he's making sure to point out, like, yeah, no, this dude taught me everything I know. Particularly for a lot of the folks who kind of just like, D'Amico, I'm sure, was carrying them, and Saleh wasn't really doing anything in San Francisco. He's like, no, that's not the case, right? But yeah, moving forward from there, the Jets, in bringing in Saleh, also brought in a first-time offensive coordinator, and so on the offense, it meant that the front office had to carry a lot of the load, right? So you talk about this collaborative approach, right? On offense, you have a first-time offense coordinator, right, and a fairly fresh staff, right? Unfortunately, the passing of Greg Knapp was a big loss there because of that veteran leadership within the staff was not there. But in general, a pretty like fairly inexperienced staff, right? And so it required the front office to carry the load, right, in putting that offense together, right? And so in that collaborative approach, right, it's like, great, I have a young offensive coordinator and a fairly young staff on offense. Like, hey, like, what do you guys want to put together? But that what they asked to put together, or what they're envisioning, is probably not going to be as complete as something that Robert Saleh is envisioning for the defense, right? And so when you consider that, and then you look at the big like wins from this front office and the misses from the front office, I think it paints a very clear picture. And I don't get why everyone is afraid of that picture, or, well, I kind of do, or everyone's kind of doesn't want to look at that for what it is, right? But okay, we'll take a look at it. The wins, of course: Sauce, Tremaine, Quincy, Bryce Huff, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. Even Quentin Jefferson this season has been way better than I think people thought, right? Huge wins, almost entirely all defensive. Truly. The few offensive wins you got, Garrett Wilson and Brees. Garrett Wilson is having a pretty decent season if they even just try to get him the ball, but they have failed to do so consistently. Brees Hall is having a terrible season. It started off very well. He's not getting any blocking at all. Unfortunately, they're hitting him behind the line almost every single time. You can't really get anything going. He had a good start when the offensive line was a little bit more stable, but it's really dropped off since then. And he just kind of looks like a shell of himself. It's not working out. I mentioned in the past, probably I'm not going to harp on it again. Him in the passing game hasn't been very good either. So those are your hits on offense, and they're really not performing super well. And I don't get that being like Aaron Rodgers not. No, Aaron Rodgers was there last season. They performed better than that, right? So not an excuse. Misses. Becton can't get on the field. Like a lot of that were concerns in general about just his his general size and well being, and making sure that like his knees will be able to and limbs will be able to handle the rigors of the NFL season. A lot of these have been freak accidents, but like he's just not on the field, so it's like, what are you gonna do when he is on the field? It's been pretty decent, so it's like that's nice. But if he's not on the field, what are you gonna like? What are you gonna do? McGovern, when he's healthy, he has really not that good. It's not really a hit. Tomlinson, not as good as folks thought he'd be coming in. Zach Wilson is a miss, a massive miss, a miss that will get many GMs fired. But again, not wishing for firing for anybody. We know that they're all probably coming back next season, but it has to be something that you consider. Jordan Whitehead, I would say, like, if you want to call that a miss, then yes, it's a miss, right? He's giving up a lot of big plays. He's struggling to just have consistent play this season, right? Whether it's like, okay, you get an interception here and there, and then have it just a terrible game, right? Taking terrible angles to the ball, and just giving up big plays, right? So it's hasn't been good for Jordan Whitehead, but that's like one clear defensive miss, right? And then a few players that are just kind of shrugs, like AVT, we don't know because he's just not on the field enough. And a lot of these huge, like season-ending injuries, like again, they're kind of freak injuries, but it's like, how can you evaluate that right now? You don't know because he's not on the field, right? But like, I think it's really a very clear pattern here, right? Like even some of the, picks that were considered bad on defense, like third round for Ashton Davis was probably too high, right? But the staff has done a great job developing him, and they put him now in the position to succeed as a third safety. I want people to be like very mindful of why he's doing so well right now, right? He struggled in that starting role that the Jets had him in, right? He, again, like Jordan Whitehead, taking terrible angles to the ball and giving up big plays as a result of that, right? Being a little over aggressive. I think the defensive staff has done a great job with players like him and Quincy, who are just too aggressive but very athletic, and they've taught them better instincts, which is hard to do because for a lot of players, it's like you have it or you don't, right? They're using that aggressiveness effectively, right? And so he's really succeeded in that third safety role, right? And that's what you want him to be, a high end depth player. You want him to be a high end third safety, and I hope that that's what they bring him back next year to do. But again, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, the Jets have consistently had good results with their defensive coaching staff developing these young players. And offensively, they have had nothing. No one's really developing super well, right? And that's a huge concern, right? And that's not just a concern for, yes, the coaching staff. It is, I'm not sure any of the offensive coaching staff is like, I don't know if I would trust any of them with any young draft pick, right? But I think, again, this goes back to the front office. They had to carry the load here. They had a young offensive staff previously. They had to fire their offensive coordinator last season, then bring in somebody else this season, right? Who's just coming off of really a terrible job in Denver, where it's like, I'm not sure what they were trying to build there. And then you're saying, like, yes, this person will have a better idea of what they're trying to build here. Not really, right? So it's like, again, your front office has to take the burden there and really lead the charge in building an offense that is effective. And have they done that? No, they have not. Right? And so, yes, that collaborative process involves Saleh as well. But at the end of the day, you hired a defensive head coach. You know what you're getting, right? You know what he's going to want to do. Just like, give me somebody who can just a decent offense. I don't really I know what I'm building on defense. Just get me somebody who can have a decent offense. And they can't do that. Right? Put together an offense that could be middle of the road. They haven't done that, right? And yes, as much as like again, I'll bring back what I was saying earlier. Defense in general is not as important as the offense. Clearly, quarterback is the most important position in the NFL as because of that, right? But the defense matters in today's NFL more than it has in the recent past, right? And I want people to be very clear on that. 4 of the top 5 scoring defenses are division leaders, right? So 4 of the top 5 teams giving up the fewest points in the NFL are division leaders, right? The Falcons are the 6th best scoring defense. They're division leaders, and in their terrible division, they've won 6 games. The Falcons are bad, right? It is a shock that they've won 6 games. That is the NFL this season. The Browns have won 7 games playing random quarterbacks, just random dudes, just like, yeah, I'll play this guy this week. I don't know. Yeah, sure. PJ Walker, yeah, start him. Right now, Joe Flacco, yeah, I mean, sure. He's played with Elijah Moore before. Yeah, sure. Start him. Right? They're just leaning on their defense. They won 7 games. Right? Random quarterbacks. Their quarterback went down too. They're still playing. Their quarterback went down later in the season, giving less time for a backup quarterback to figure things out. They're still playing. Right? The Steelers, they've won 7 games. Their offense is disgusting. Wasting very good players with terrible quarterback play, bad schemes. Fired their offensive coordinator already. 7 games. People are even talking about firing Mike Tomlin. People are crazy out there. I don't understand what's wrong with him. I'll pick up Mike Tomlin in a second. I don't know why you would fire Mike Tomlin in that situation. I don't know what you want him to do with that offense. But that's how it's the same situation here, right? You're given absolute trash on one side of the ball, right? And you have a dominant unit on the other side of the ball, right? But the anchor that the Jets have with their offense is so much worse than all of those teams, the Falcons, the Browns, the Steelers that I just mentioned, that their defense literally cannot overcome it. Like, I want you to, like, in your mind, because if you've seen Steeler games, you've seen Browns games, you've seen Falcons games, those are really bad offenses, right? The Jets offense is much worse than those ones. That is a indictment on the coaching staff and the front office. Like, it's not good, right? So that has to change. The assumption is that it will change with Aaron Rodgers coming in. That is a very that is a huge leap, I would say. There's a lot wrong with the Jets on offense. And I am not completely convinced that even Aaron Rodgers, and the caveat there is that it's 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers next season. So, but even a player of that caliber, it's a huge hill to climb with this current staff if they make no changes next season. That is a huge hill to climb. So, what I would say, honestly, my recommendations, like, I do not care what they would do with the offensive coaching staff. Like, do whatever you want. Again, I'm not gonna call for anybody's jobs or whatever. Do whatever you want with the offensive staff. Like, I would not be so tied to anybody on the offensive staff, right? But, we'll see what happens. I think everyone on the defensive staff should be kept. I think they've done an incredible job. I think Ashton Davis is it's such a brilliant case study in what they're capable of. And it's also, I think, the perfect comparison between front office and coaching staff of, we overdrafted this player because of random intangibles that we thought were super important, but he's super athletic and very raw, and we probably drafted him too high, but like, just, I don't know, figure out if you guys can do something with this, right? And then coaching staff's like, yeah, we figured it out. He's a third safety. He's a high-end depth player, and every time we put him on the field, he makes a play, gets a turnover, and that's it, right? So, yeah, when you're I think it's just such a stark difference in the two sides of the team. And of course, that often leads to a lot of internal drama and issues. But yeah, I hope that the staff is able to put together something next season that looks way better on offense, because if they can do that, they have a defense that they can run with, right? They have a defense that can elevate a middle of the road offense to look incredible because of just giving them opportunities over and over again, right? This defense like is the type of defense that you win with and you potentially win in the playoffs with as well, right? But of course, when you have a giant anchor on the other side of the ball, all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh yeah, no, that unit's not so. Is that unit that good? We're not." Oh, but after the offense punted 12 times, they gave up that really big run. Okay. um. So yeah, that's all I have for this week. I'll be back next week, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more fun to talk about. I do not want to talk about quarterback play or anything like that. I think all of that this season is a waste of time. But the Patriots lost. Hopefully the Jets get a top 3 pick. It's gonna be very hard to make the wrong selection there, but I do want to call out something that Connor mentioned. We'll see how things trend as the season goes along. If the Jets have a top 2 pick, it better be Drake May. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. We'll discuss more in the coming days. Um, have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.